All black pupils, hear your name. Legion, hear your name. Again, told. President Biden, President Biden, President Trump, President Obama, and all the presidents. And then James Madison again as a founder, as the face of our plural founders, and his plan that went and got George Washington, thank God, to agree to use his plan to force a unity to self-value itself for other reasons besides those natural, because that was needed because it was unnatural impositions. And this is also relative to where and to how they had to leave slavery entrenched, because there was/is a worse method of it. That if you tried to break that forms of it as they had it described, enforced legally in syntactically all locations that were formally, what couldn't defend itself in the Constitution unabridged? No. What couldn't defend the value of or the quality of fact-sheeping nature necessary to defend the value of the Constitution unabridged, and how we have rights that are too numerous to list. Regardless if we know the number of the statute or not. I believe it's the ninth. I learned it on Judging Freedom website of Judge Napolitano. Every expert has those knowledges and then defenses of them without they themselves realizing. Like, for example, a little kid in New York City could discern that only fake science and care has spoken for New York City. But where and how that's the truth, and where and how blame it comes with this. Everyone has been forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to blame other things, others, ourselves. For example, for things like the breaching method itself, that which had been entrenched before our founders were born here. Everyone had to hide their motivations for that theater, which was actual, but it was still theater because everyone had to lie about their motivations. Like, what that up to them starting the course to get the Constitution unabridged. It was abridged during Jim Crow times. It wasn't that long ago. Even though I don't even know the date, but I know more about it than people know most of it. Some ways, like some other people do, at the same time. See, but we're not paying attention to this because everyone has access to the hyper simultaneous, which is hyper native pure. It shows us that Native Americans and regular Americans together got and get American history wrong. The impositions about on Native Americans wrong, on ourselves too. The same thing, because when you have an imposition upon a Native American, you have imposition upon yourself. When you have an imposition upon yourself, you have an imposition upon Native American. They are hyper additionally American, but that hyper additional is because of the way they should. In other words, countries and systems A through Z were forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to be a part of individually grouped and together systems as suits and ties, counters to it, and exceptions as collusion. Where and how we are the Trinity per its words, per its conjunction to our words. If we ignore the way it communicates, individual group difference /s in species volume bound. This part of it, we could use the hyper evidential. President Obama, this is why he didn't bring out how we left out how black pupils We have the same color and whites of eyes. We have the same. We guys can't see the whites of eyes. You see them, but you can't discern. This course, because you had other since you guys were kids. Our founders had no choice. In other words, they never that just because they say they put the Constitution up, it was still formally entrenched. To keep rolls in with it, you can't defend that in any kind of a nature of unity or any kind of a nature of independence that the breaching method couldn't discern and manipulate and maintain, used to hurt or sins and help to collusion simultaneously because it needs to the simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous. It needs other things, other slash s and or selves blamed for things it caused historically and for things it causes now. See, the religious experts would have come with the sciences too. Readings of if you're not even if you don't go for the crazy with this with religions because they're not reading their books. They have insanity they bring to the readings of books. This is why and how at the beginning of the Quran and at the beginning of the Old Testament they have parts that say only defend this part. But you guys defend the parts after it. And exactly the way a discernible human fact cheaping nature breaching method wanted and needs. And so recently in one of his videos, Judge Napolitano, a former New Jersey Superior, I don't know if it was Superior Court, I believe it was Superior Court judge, he said that there was an algorithm used by Israeli defense forces, which was like it gives a certain amount of value to the targets as people, and it calculates also the people around them and timing of where everyone's going to go. See, but what the Israelis missed, and what Americans missed, and what countries A through Z missed, all groupings of humanity too. They have to make voices. And every individual group has the value of humanity because its volume science forces that. But we haven't been as names A through Z, and as individual differences, group differences, in other words, all systems tactical authoritarian than its own, and it uses the difference between individual, finite, grouped, active, and progressive. Also, to the difference, in other words, there's an extent to the future we know about now as seasons, for example, and there's an extent we don't know about. There's an extent active now, and there's what came first before the smallest finite detail now. And the order of the finite itself is a part of time. So, in other words, whether countries are on the sides with the nuclear weapons, or more on sides are both nuclear weapons, all this time passed, and the ones holding the nuclear weapons and the means to transverse the earth the best still have suburbs, let alone cities. The suburbs were designed by the human fact cheaping nature breaching method before America's founders were born. It has not been clear about what caused slavery because that breaching method measured and maintained and read about what James Madison communicated to us before our people did, who came through schools with sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, as a certain type of victim / hyper victim, where this method is as of such a nature and already forced it. There are styles of logic and natures of logic that if someone tries to appreciate everyone's actions and natures as a certain type of victim slash hyper victim, that's a relative, that's one of the things that was manifest only allowed to be. Otherwise, that body would be sensed, even if as the majority of people that is a body that way. Even if all the countries together agree to stay systems tactical terrier than its own, or just not caring that we are, it will continue to demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature in the form as Earth's, as humanity's, a special difference, distinct from but non-distinct from, and simultaneously with and as Earth, but only with and as it because of how we are simultaneously its identity, the identity of the hyper simultaneous, which is increasingly discernible in the languages are manifest in demonstration of this. But we have description of the short words, of the value of what is concise. For example, with standard English books, with precedents and statutes, formal and other, originally instilled the difference between that two simultaneously. What was is used to keep all sides of criminal and civil cases. The lawyers, the names at the courts, everyone's family members, anyone's. The news at the same time planting sequence shifts, faked and totally faked transcripts and ties between people, totally fake ties and natures of ties between people, relative to uses because there is use slash s. That's three ways of this. Not just because of how we are. This is again the same way, and it's simultaneous with where and how we are grouped. Suits and ties, counters, and exceptions as collusion slash s and pretending other. Because at countries, locations, areas, and states, A through Z, they some way they, in other words, the real causes of the worst natures of value nature progressions, acts, and natures, acts like wrongdoing self. In other words, we have black people's whites of eyes. We know that breaching method assigned descriptions of criminal enterprises while they were still collusions with them. Private, overt. See, because the difference of that, because all and those the formal or the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness, right through you only let man be manifest. All that used remotely. That's where and how and why. Even though this is recorded. See, there are things that are recorded. People say, I don't see the evidence. Okay, move on. We know there's a quality of fact should be nature forced at formal legal locations and should never stop being exploited. How many people, in other words, and the difference of that, the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, again, the lawyers on all sides of cases in the Ninth Circuit Court in the day of the World Trade Center attack. All sides and names on all sides of that case, leading up to the attack, in the attack context and since, including the countries involved, including Saudi Arabia. Increasingly, people tied to Eric Mendez and his brother with switching names, involved with people intercultural and intracultural. A whole bunch of people involved with Italian and American and Pakistani psychiatrists with psychiatry, tied personally and professionally with judges and prosecutors and their extended family members, planting evidences and acting tied to it on and off campuses timed. People that don't know each other at all, people that barely know each other, all exception nature that made trying to make it look like other than it was. In other words, they know that there's people I never even tried to contact me from other areas tied to the houses. next to everywhere I live, there were connections made to that. And they're playing games. That's how they play these games. They hide four names about not to hide them, and there's nothing against them because there's a hyperforeign involved. But to demonstrate it, you have to demonstrate how has the people jumping in everyone's conversations. This is, in other words, part of the reason the kids are being tortured simultaneously, where and how they're being used collusions to torture the presidents. And what's that do? In other words, you guys could keep repeat 1,000 times. You could pretend it's politics, but you have rules of war crime acts and methods, while simultaneously you have sexual abuses of kids in ways that are not debatable. And you guys are pretending it's debatable because you're pretending to be against it as you frame the issues. With Fox News, for example, they have rules with intelligence families involved with the locations next to schools and next to the state capital of Connecticut. And they have those different types of clubs where there are different kinds of circles of people. And they also use that where they have that weaponized originally and still. It's not even debatable. Things that aren't even debatable, like how they weaponize the difference between color and how they assign black and white to communicate, other than nature uses it to communicate with black people. So this is what they're doing with Donald Trump too. Fox News, I saw reported by Fox News and a clip of. Let me just try to get a clip so I can put a source. You know what I'm saying? I want to get a source for this. Now I'm gonna start. Oh my gosh! It was my bad. My bad. Okay, hold on. One more second. One more. Fox News. Fox News. Anyway, so they are torturing the president. And there's a torture method of the kids that is between campuses. And it is not them testing people, whatever like that, they're pretending. And there are recorded meetings to show this, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context. And still, don't forget that and how effectively they were shown needs and means to hide how they had roles, to needing to pretend they're against torture. I mean, needing to pretend they're for it because they know they broke the Constitution. They know they can't defend a style or afford to be, let alone to protract short words with theories, let alone convictions proper regarding leading up to the World Trade Center. And so Weathersfield police also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed the people with the name Scalora involved with them forging and switching names and falsified police reports and roles with police forms on and off on campuses, involved with whiting forensics also with a Bob Chase and a Phil Cololo. A Bob Chase said a Phil Cololo was involved with federal evidences crimes with them, drugs and medicines crimes, and sexual crimes too, and more digital crimes with the kids, with a Bob Chase and whiting forensics, with the same house involved with wire crimes with Weathersfield police. Through time, falsified police report. They pretended with WFSB and with intelligence associated with them next to them too. That and in other words, that I had conversations with them and about the World Trade Center, and I had conversations with others. They pretended I had doctors as a kid. I had no doctors as a kid, mental doctors as a kid, and they have roles. After the World Trade Center, I asked for doctors to help me report with courts and the FBI and police forms and foreign and domestic military affected confessions at request for me to help them with. In other words, that's how I took it. In other words, instead, they had want to stay roles with federal evidence as crime leading up to the World Trade Center attack. Federal rules of evidence as crime leading up to the World Trade Center attack. Extortion, identity theft, fraud, slanders. These are also black KKK themed families that know my name. I don't even know their name. They're military too. Ugh. And well, some of them doctors too. Fake transcripts of people. They've been using investigators remotely since founding, pounding drums. Interstates, these are connected. Rolls with this. All natures of location /S rolls with this. Clock, begin here, block, tell names. So they've been forbidding writing. And see, that's what they're doing. Locking Trump sickly distinctly prevented a quality of fact achieving nature from President Biden. So they have to go sickly distinctly again, mostly because it's functional. How sickly non-distinctly all leaders are victims. But we don't even address that, even though it's discernible. And where how when you try to address it, even if you're a majority of people, black people. In other words, we have to look close and step back simultaneously. In other words, values attributed to voting. Value is attributed to isms. In other words, differences applied to difference, or the cause /S of difference. See, the nature of questions is the nature of possession that is used by confessions, the way used by the breaching method, distinctly originally and still. Because the breaching method knew that nature was continually going to demonstrate to humanity. A breaching method is involved with logic, but as increasingly humanity has had other things, others ourselves, taking the place of those natural demonstrations of the human fact achieving nature breaching method. And the simultaneously revelations that come from that. The ground, its identity, relationship to itself, and the waters, hypernated pure. That system that has us, individual, group difference /S, distinctly from the birds, but non-distinctly. Distinctly from the fish, but non-distinctly. Even insects have quality aspects in nature as an extent of shared consciousness. More than once now, different. Actually, it was a spider both times. Appeared and then it got away. But then they know they're not going to find food. And they're going to try looking for out, and they're going to remember that you were trying to help them. If you try to get them to walk on the napkin. And if you're scared, try to discipline yourself and bring it outside. And if you're that scared of bugs too, the spider's going to eat the other bugs. And so when it rains, what happens? Worms used to come from the ground. They're barely present too. So the bugs go away. Where the birds need? Worms. We have been systems individually grouped together, tactical terror from its own. Again, specifically by this breaching method, that new nature that was going to demonstrate negative value nature progressions acts in nature is also grouped simultaneously. The cause of the same thing, the breaching method. And relative to its lessons. where and how it communicates with what is with where and how it is the difference between what will only stay positive and hyper positive unto itself, and where and how all exceptions in exception nature that appears to be in demonstration of other, they come with demonstration slash S of the same thing. But we have been forbid this and has stayed blamed on other things, others ourselves, even when as truth. It propagated that to be self-cultivated. For example, self-value use slash S of other communicated for James Madison and our founders and his plan and how and why it was possible, even though it was impossible before he went to go and get George Washington to agree to help to pull that plan off. The start of it, because there was no way anyone could get it unabridged in their lifetime. Slavery had been already sickly distinctly entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies. Already had been used functionally. How sickly non-distinctly was left out, increasingly relative to how it is left out now. Right where and how people blame on other things, others themselves, including politics. You guys have assigned politics to be a value it is not. You have assigned the cause slash S and the guilt of it. So you guys are not being led by a hyper invisible but still discernible. Would show you to show how everyone's guilty. No, but you have people you have maintained self-value roles with a torture slash S method, an extortion slash S method, and a factory nature slavery method, therefore physical slavery method. But you guys can't even be honest about the extortion of George Washington. And you self-value that when you're in defenses of yourself. Because that was his outcome. Slash S, as all differences are and have been Black pupils. At countries A through Z, they have not had possession of their name. Slash S. And that has been discernible by the people per where and how, too, though. The locations, areas, and states have stayed, forcing the leaders one way to stay victim predators against them, slash hyper victim, slash hyper predators, while simultaneously. It's part of what is forced. We guys are going to pretend integrity, pretend identity of logic individually grouped together, other than this one of the hyper programming too. Ugh. See, hyper programming appreciates lists in ways that modern programmers can't appreciate while describing the value of the law, while describing the value of their science, slash S, while boxing, martial arts, and wrestling share grouped the identity the sciences share to show us this, as all things do, have means to show us, even things made up, have inseparable from all parts of itself, those things, individually grouped and together. Its hyper-perfect system. All exceptions, exception nature that appear to be a demonstration of other. They come with demonstration of the same thing, slash S. But this is communications regarding you and that uses a special difference. See, our special difference is being forced from here. Least of Hadith. See, it will stay equal to itself at all places. And there was a concentrated value/value progression here that revealed and still could reveals evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere. In many ways, including especially where we are fact-sheeting nature, it makes physical means come out of nowhere. And those physical means make more fact-sheeting nature means come out of nowhere. You have the nature of negotiations. You have the nature of peace, like peaceful energy creation. Guys left out the difference between peace and hyper peace because you had it left out. But the nature of the rules of English grammar, the rules of languages, if read from the nature of themselves, the nature of themselves, of themselves, /s. It is manifest that way because the identity of the hyper simultaneous is an extent that is not fully present, but anywhere the smallest part of itself is. Even if it's something made up by a part of itself, its complete identity of relationship to itself. And the value of that, there are three equally increasing identities of volume as value as nature, / nature as value, and as nature as value, / value as nature, for how it is manifest, for how it can and will be discerned. Not one has learned vaccines, teach legions things, tell bodies each. The human species body longs to shadow box, so one must teach. So in other words, we must move as one, but we must be led by its system, which we have means to be led by it. Tactically / hyper tactically, we can counter together already locked in U / S of our names and understanding how names work. For example, all these names of all these little parts of your body, and if you named every individual cell, in other words, all semi-nature relationship to the shared identity as your complete self. Each is a complete self. And so every species, every individual is simultaneously a semi-nature relationship to the species body / S because there are other species bodies. And but not because it's temporary / lasting identity of value / value progression, volume increase, where and how the identity of forever nature that generated matter makes more of itself is what the ancients revealed. You have to it shows us the answer is by appreciating equally it's how they're equally increasing as value. It's the extent of its identity that we could discern. Its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that as three distinct identities of hyper invisible but still discernible. For example, the present participle and the past participle are two identities of hyper invisible but still discernible that come with a third, not just the future. It comes also, everything comes with the value of what was either true before everything or the smallest finite detail, because this is also how nature communicates. But this is where and how The breaching method made a certain type of victim slash hyper victim. In other words, not know how to respond to crazy negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Only let be stayed manifest. Only let be tried to be preemptively stopped by an S collusion slash S. Otherwise, that body is sensed, even if it is a majority of people, even if it is everyone at once. Black pupils, we know that the suburbs from here, from America to Russia, were designed before our founders were even born, and all groupings that they had to defend themselves. Same thing with China. Systems tactical terrier from that which is hypernated pure. That which could afford to formally have discerned at formal schools the value of yin yang and of alpha and omega and of a theory that is more with a conviction that is more probable to just that yin yang and alpha and omega were revealed to be taught together. Alpha being the constant, yin yang being about the constant, its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. In other words, where it's only going to stay positive onto itself. Again, exception nature that appears to be in demonstration of other is also more probable that the ancients would teach this as leaf of Hades goes with this, which is a special difference forced from here, as Earth's a special difference, where it is equally positive and negative. It is an identity of relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. Where and how it is making more of positive onto itself simultaneously as that. Just like every identity is, the identity of the hyper simultaneous. It is the identity that is why and how we need more than one word for a verb. We can't just use a verb alone. Because what is being described, what is being shown, we're being shown the identity of the hyper relativity's identity, its identity of relation to itself, and the only increasing value of that within the extent of it, of what is true always, that we could discern. The value of the seasons are true always, not leaving out the slightest exception, not leaving out the value of what came first, not leaving out the value of what is to come that we know or not, that we don't know too, because we try to understand them simultaneously. Because you have to use the simultaneous to discern the hyper simultaneous. Hot and cold are value to show the simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous. Get back 3 volumes. See, inherent, active, and progressive, they are bound. All gather round vaccines. I teach us things belong. So Connecticut intercities names leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense, also with foreign and domestic military. For example, and news media and their family members and everyone's neighbors, corners of streets associated. They have roles with things that are manifest that they don't understand. But this is where and how everyone lies to an extent, and including formal people that are directed to not lie, including people, in other words, or tell the truth. In other words, roles with predicate acts with facts are increasingly collusions that no one wanted, except for where there are exceptions. And that breaching method knew that it could make and keep self-cultivated styles of logic and natures of logic, evaluating those exceptions being and having been too. So well that it could keep self-value. Overt / insidious. 3 ways. Identity theft, fraud, slanders against our founders, let alone therefore against ourselves. Because that's the only hope we have of freedom, of raising it, from needing to be, no, liberty cannot be defended until it, in other words, or defined apart from collusion /s, until freedom is real. And until the courts allow equality of fact treating nature outside courts, proper, what they, in other words, what they need when they need to properly. In other words, they'll say, oh, because they can't follow the rules though. Leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense, New York courts with Connecticut intercities courts and their state judicial branch offices and the Connecticut state corrections offices and names next to it increasingly have roles connected for themselves, putting fake things in databases at each campus, each age and nature of campus, and connecting them. Because of where and how it was easier than cake for a breaching method to measure and maintain all identities of formal criminal insidiousness, of private criminal insidiousness, of overt criminal enterprises criminal insidiousness, of logic and nature's A through Z regarding things like politics while they arose the witch trials, Jim Crow laws, slavery, opinions regarding the differences of suburbs and cities, and leaving out how we didn't employ the lack of integrity while pretending other. That the breaching of employed. One is a victim. Those people will call you a predator. They'll try to make it. Oh, you can't take it. They can't afford to have discerned people A through Z, the hyper simultaneous. And whenever there's an exception, like leaders can find a way to get everyone to listen to them at once, except for how the breaching method, we can't afford that, and already showed and shows. The FBI, for example, has an extent of consciousness that they have rules of wire crime action methods with the news and with Weathersfield police and with houses that have with a whole bunch of different departments, same house /s involved with them, with kids of Afghanistan and leaders of Afghanistan, their own against their own, our own against our own. And then there are victims too, but they won't allow proper treatments of it. They want to debates that all styles that give power to voting that it doesn't have, never had. So in other words, and the value of getting or having gotten arrested is also giving value. So where they go back and forth speaking about criminal justice, Central Connecticut State University is in the process of making confessions. They've been planting evidences and pretending others simultaneously because it's what they do when they're caught extorting people. And they've been planting evidences on all sides of criminal and civil cases, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in it and since. All kinds of natures of juxtaposed natures of organized crime have all kinds of phenomena and behavior weirdos, and not legitimately. This is on a mass scale, unmarked police forms who are intercultural and intracultural tools that have spoken other than is needed to be, and that had been needed to be spoken, that was never spoken, regarding how sickly distinctly every colonist was hurt, and every American was his hurt by having black and white, having other communicate for it than it is capable of being. We have black, we have exception, we have the same exact color eyes, except how we have different color eyes too. Whoa. So in other words, its identity of relationship to itself. And the only increasing value of that is here to appreciate. Because the only increasing value of that is the identity of the hyper simultaneous. And it is even more valuable than that because it is generating more values. Is the identity of hyperrelativity. You hear its theorem here. So prepare vaccines. I teach you things belong. In other words, you got the nature, search the nature debate when someone brings up an idea good like pantheism. Like getting the whole world to agree to stay on the same page, to get on play a game with the countries that have nuclear weapons by making hyper positives out of negatives, by realizing that they have negative value nature progressions, acts in nature that they aren't allowed to talk about for good reasons. But we can say we can make those fact-shipping nature logistical impositions go away. We can make physical ones go away, even if for temporary. We could do it at the same time for this method /S of stacking means to do it, and even way more and better than free too. Ooh, this is why no one could afford better. The systems than ones designed on rivers, tactically denatured, everything polluted, everyone hurting everyone trying to help everyone is locking them in too. In other words, there was never possession of the North or the South. The breaching method had more possession over it than our founders did on many fronts in the American Revolution. The losses stay. I mean, not losses. Never had the lack of liberation. In other words, liberation never came to fruition. Freedom never came to fruition because all location /S, all differences. The difference between overt criminal enterprises, private ones, their kids, their things, their neighbors, and the interbranch at the same time, the lawyers. Everyone was is sticking in sequence shifts. Everyone was is cultivating further. Only allowed propagated human fracture nature styles, cultural definitions, and defenses self-defeating and self-defeating. You guys can't even defend your cultures properly, let alone the great aspects of them. You have to hide them to keep it like that. That's what culture becomes. In other words, culture is about that evolution science and method /S that checks. Is the evolution, real evolution science, real hyper positive? Because that's everywhere at once. So yin yang and alpha and omega, like black pupils and whites of eyes. How we have the same exact eyes except for our different color eyes. You guys are playing games when you speak for law. You're hiding behind those negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature's killers. Because the breaching method showed you guys needs to. With where and how when you think, people A through Z. You have roles that predicate acts with facts. Because you have roles with keeping other communicate for black people's whites of eye. For how we have the same color eyes, different color eyes, at the same time, difference is communicating. The hyper difference. The one that has fish with eyes almost exactly like humans. Fish. Has you bugs with this. All it has exception nature, showing us how to speak. All whisper Creek. All whisper Creek. All whisper Creek. There was a Native American tribe called the Creeks, I believe, in other words. So there are many tribes, but not one remembers properly, was allowed to remember properly. The landscape before it became tactically denatured. The sciences before they became criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence. So not one person of the human species body remembers. In other words, but nature shows. And nature shows there's one thing: the whole world will help you guys with nuclear weapons. So all you have to do is just admit, and I'll donate tactically / hyper tactically through for the world, but through the nuclear holding weapons and countries like Iran, who could help us so much. Us being the human species volume science. Because we have individually all grouped since preaching method from some ancient times, from before modern religion's messengers, thank God for them, because in other words, they left means to them, they did damage control, one thing. Number two, they left means to demonstrate this to us. But the same way, yin yang is not appreciated properly, where yin yang is still preserved. And the difference between the people that disbelieve, won't give a quality of fact to nature. In other words, there are these 5 distinct identities of time. We have not appreciated them. How they are also 3 ways bound by as one. Vaccine spine, cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall / S. And appreciation gases in their mixture. Positive or negative? No. And water in its elements, positive or negative. To the body of life, and each has its own. Vaccine, hello, people. So we can fix the world with pantheism / hyper-pantheism. This is not just economically. We use an economic method where every dollar is going to be like 100 times over, coupled with better than free help of humanity. You don't think the entire America and the world wants to help our cities? Our suburbs were tactically denatured and designed that way for torture, extortion of our founders before our founders were even born. Anyone who didn't have roles with those crazy things. This is sickly, distinctly North and South too, and there were more than 13 colonies. They had to be counter-extorted with James Madison's plan. But see, it was still entrenched, so it measured and maintained through their lifetimes. And after their passing, they communicate other for James Madison in his face and ours. We're supposed to understand his plan, how he got George Washington and him as the face of our founders. And then they went as founders to go and get George Washington to agree. And that's critical because then they had to go counter-extort to get other founders. The same thing that other modern founders had to do, because already defenses of themselves from some ancient times also required groupings of humanity's self-value, tactical ulterior, from how humanity has us wanting to be inseparable species body and simultaneously independence, its way, or sensing. Only an individual can defend the order of the finite. And so President Biden / Chief Biden and the presidents before them, that's why sickly distinctly they went after him. with investigations into. That's what they report. And they went after. That's what they're doing with Donald Trump. They're giving charges, and then they're going fishing with juries. And rather than make that, and they covered this up consciously because they've been planting evidences too sometimes, and increasingly at the same time, that's only capable of being and having been. And or people blame other things other than themselves, even when correctly leaving out the breaching method. And that gets away with that because it also appears as if to be foreign, because it comes through the foreign too, because this is where and how it is communicated. So our campuses, a whole bunch of different countries, all the ones aim guns at each other and worse, killing each other and torture each other and have worse aimed at each other. In other words, all this time, we could have fixed. The suburbs were designed to cause negative value and aggression, accidents, and to be a landscape theater, reliant upon resources from other locations. Tactical terror from how nature has that. There are proofs that they took away all there are proofs that there are perennial vegetables that are no longer existent because they tactically denatured the context that had brought them, that they were reliant upon. Like we know now, the contexts aren't set up to just grow seeds. You have to do all these things. You have to make a context for the seed. And we know that it didn't evolve through suburbs where people keep mowing the lawn and throwing away the stuff that the soil would eat and the worms that come out to feed the birds when the bugs go away when it rains. We're using systems tactical ulterior from its own, where we have voices on positive and negative, or identity. There are being and have been systems tactical ulterior from its own. The one that has the species volumes distinct. In other words, that's why I had, years before these wars, I had negotiations in a counter theater on social media regarding Israel and Palestine fighting as names of the human species body. And I had, it's a boxing theme. Because boxing martial arts and wrestling theme. Famous wrestlers would help us once we started with more, because it depicts the world. But in other words, also has Ukrainian, because in the movie, I pretend to be a whole bunch of different. I keep switching my name legally and then taking fights under different cultural, pretending I'm from different cultures as part of to make it a more comedic and interesting, the movie, and how it gets involved with the world. This also goes with the Little Rap Guy and Friends cartoons. The Little Rap Guy and Friends cartoons, they're charged with cultivating the counter extortion of New York City, Hartford, and the neighboring suburbs and nations. But in other words, nations A through Z, Little Rap Guy and his program, they have them counter extorted, because we all know people A through Z are extorted. We are not allowed to appreciate nature's system. The Native Americans aren't even allowed to. All exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other, it comes with demonstration, the same thing, but not one of us has had legal representation proper. So people, I don't know. So while I was in prison, one of the people gave me a hard time with police that have been switching names and forging names with proven child offenders. They've been doing it to force it. The FBI also has more roles with obscure pictures on Twitter with female employees of courts and judges involved too, with officers switching names and forging names, and roles with all kinds of things leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. Also, per their roles, with names associated with depositions of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, like a Thaddeus Grabowski, also on Fox Connecticut News, involved with a whole bunch of people from Weathersfield, involved with child abuses, and the people involved with wire crimes and conversations with them associated with that, and the people that live around everyone, and people next to parks and next to schools involved. Planting evidences, including with the news. These are foreign and domestic mental health people. So Ron Adams has some police, and he brought in Judge Napolitano's name. In other words, they probably put him there. I can not Judge Napolitano, I don't think would, but in other words, Ron Adams says, "I am only keeping your brain sham, doctor. Remember the blade that never feels rock grows dull." Ron Adams knows some police. He's involved with a conversation with them, with Weathersfield Police Facebook page too, with a Joshua Schumack and his mother. I don't know his mother's name. She's involved with some foreign and domestic KKK themed, black themed, interreligious spots. Collusions also with military and Yukon people involved planting evidences and people on off Harvard Hospital, off from the Britain Hospital, with families next to campuses and next to corners of streets being used to repeat fake things too. And sometimes to plant fake things as evidences, including with the news leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. WFSB also is being directed to plant fake conversations and evidences further with the schools involved, intercities, Central Connecticut State University, and intelligence associated with them, including military. They have rules planting evidences with little tricks through the names at the schools too sometimes, and sometimes the kids. The kids aren't even in the same class, but they're in the same class. And they're pretending people fake ties and fake natures of ties to other people and fake motivations for it. This is also why and how they're leaking at the same time with people that they're pretending. In other words, there's behavior racketeering. People are pretending fake motivations for why they like or don't like people, and the difference of that is have been used remotely too. Ugh. So these are also New York legal identities that have and have had roles shutting down voices by rules with torture leading up to the World Trade Center attack, then in the attack and since. And that's why they self-valid roles legalizing torture to hide their roles and pretend not to realize, it was legalized now, to pretend it's only that. Because they have been preventing equality of fact treatment nature as collusion / as a crime scenes, including murder crime scenes, including body dumping spots, including per their roles with the use / s of names next to them. A reported serial killer and the people of his prison and himself, non-verbally confirmed, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, recorded, roles with names next to that body dumping spot with all these different countries, people with the military from Germany that are KKK themed, involved with the Mark Violet and the Justa Kovinskis, all along Route 175 planting evidences with whiting forensics names through time, state police families of involved with also and Eric Jensen's Mike Roberts and a Ray Reynolds and a Joe DeMoro. They have roles with foreign and domestic military and medical families, putting fake things in databases, fake ties and nature of the ties between kids. That's why, in other words, that's why I never tried to contact them. They tried to make exceptions pretending other. And when I made an exception with Eric Jensen, they tried to make no, they got involved with. They can't afford to have what they've been using fake exceptions and using lying about exceptions, exception nature. Also, has rules with intelligence families with computers and programming families. I don't even know all their names, but in other words, before the World Trade Center attack in New York City, there were people involved with the World Trade Center, the spots next to it, in the court next to it, who have been, they also, it was proven after the attack, in the attack context, they had presented to the panel of judges in the court next to the World Trade Center post-dated legal papers from inside the court. As people involved increasingly with schools I went, involved with former director of the FBI's co-defendants and their family members, increasingly planting evidences, identity theft, fraud, slanders next to news locations. And as the rules with news predicate acts, which they rather have me address it as, because they won't help it. And they use wire crime methods where they put fake transcripts. So we gotta keep it simple because they're having all these fake conversations and they prevent you short words because they can't allow their protraction. They already put too many fake words through time. You should fear God for the people, how they speak about they use the knowledge of good and evil, to use a phrase from the Bible. People who quote the Bible and pretend to love the Bible, and people who counter that, they have collusion/S. They can't afford to have discern how, for example, two different religious books both have parts right up front that says the only part they have to defend, and no one even knows about it. Everyone's addressing, and when you search the nature of questions people ask, they are being asked for a breaching method as using to measure and maintain the value of what came first left out, finite details left out, group details left out, simultaneous details values left out, use/s of that, use/s of names, name/s, difference/s left out. We're sick of hearing about prejudice and we're sick of hearing counters to sick of prejudice. We want to get the real fight on. Who disbelieves? That's what we need. Get them one name in sequence. They're switching names in sequence. The courts timed collusions with all the names with the World Trade Center attack. Has something to do with the roles with the golf places too. In other words, Cromwell, Connecticut has roles pretending to be against Saudis while they're collusion still, because with the ones all sides with it. A DeMorrow family recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people with the names galore with wire crimes in Wethersfield police, falsified police evidences crimes, roles with home break-ins in the past relative, with a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital, and businesses and houses next to them involved with criminal enterprises and private ones, drugs and medicines crimes, and their sexual circles involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with them. I only know Joe DeMorrow seeking me out to make confessions and record other than they're pretending is recorded because they painted themselves in corners also with judges' family members with the same houses involved with them too, like with the name Cololo, confessed by O'Sullivan. They don't give their whole names and they're switching names with the ones named McGee. And they're bringing in their kids involved with it. And this has something to do with their roles with parks in Hartford and Wethersfield and the houses and businesses next to them, like an Ilo's Kitchen and a Tomorrow's Market. They have roles with former mayors from Wethersfield with sexual and medical abuses of kids, identity thefts and frauds against them, little games while they're putting fake things in campuses and putting fake motivations for it. Fake, in other words, that are increasingly tied to other people's confessions and demonstrations of it. I don't have anything to do with them ever. And they're pretending other because they got stuck doing that. And when they're not pretending that too, then they're leaving out how they put me in fake words. They're planting evidence. I caught them with the principal child abuser and more then and now. There was a Kevin Harris who was reportedly a boyfriend of a daughter of a Mr. Murphy. There were a whole bunch of people from Korea involved with I don't even know their name. They know my name. Involved with people from Italy and from Pakistan. Involved with all kinds of planting evidences with medical families on off databases with their and newspaper, their family members, the corners of streets near the people associated with them. We have to get them on paper. So because there's roles again with criminal enterprises, private one, the witness protection programs even involve people. So Ron Adams brought up Officer Powell as one of the officers involved with retired Weathersfield police chiefs, Cintron and others. I don't know the names of, associated with the same house /S. At least one other one. So, people, it's important to understand and to discern what is actually recorded. In other words, they have the valuable court cases. If something wrong, they mess up, someone should be able to contact easily. There's a difference between having the right to call someone and being able to call them. They've been using a torture method since before the World Trade Center attack. Note the World Trade Center was effectively used to pull off using remotely since founding our legal formal writers of legal statutes, using them to legalize torture with the Patriot Act, per MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN. The transition from the internal department, immigration and natural etiquette, and then its transition into the Department of Homeland Security. And roles with that and names next to it are increasingly recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts with facts methods /S, that they don't even know the extent of, but on off Central Connecticut State University and other campuses, including Quinnipiac University, has roles with polling, with names in collusion against the president's, regardless of the Republican Democrat exception. The campuses never stop being used remotely. They need the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, natures, blame the other things other than themselves. They need people using natures of debate, natures of protest, complaining about things like money, the way they need you to. Because then you're going to defend that. They're charging you millions with just individuals. And for all kinds of scams against our cities, that there are only there are less than 1,000 streets. There's like 500 streets about in Hartford, Connecticut. A Leahy family, one's with the name Lombardo, foreign and domestic military. One involved with recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a whole bunch of Weathersfield police that know my name. I don't know their name, putting fake transcripts in databases with people named Colo and Walters. Also, that they're involved with people that make confessions about Charlie Bowes and his sister. I don't know his sister's name. She knows my name. She has rolled a whole bunch of intelligence families at an old town cafe in Old Weathersfield, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with judges and prosecutors, overt criminal enterprises, private ones at the same time, as people putting fake things in databases and behavior racketeering by people timing where people are going to be, walking by, etc., and lying about their motivations. Then they want to let's go before court. They want to go back and forth with evidences with evidence as racketeering, as evidence racketeering natures and styles. Worse, I'm not even a lawyer. Worse than war crimes. That's how we're going to do it, black people. So we're going to explain properly what we actually could discern. We're going to need a anti-hyper archetypal criminal enterprise act, and we're going to need a who disbelieves act. So we're going to need the help of judges and prosecutors. See, I wouldn't even have to give this stuff away. Be able to do it, in other words, with it. But you guys are playing that. You guys aren't following mandated law. You former people, I'm putting that in the record here. So in other words, so this is connected to all these wars. They have connections. And so, for example, psychiatry has roles with emergency rooms or what they call triages, where people go in there for actual medical emergencies and or to visit people. People also go in there for other things that never stopped because they need the causes of it. Blame the other things on themselves. But also they have a whole bunch of families that work with Hartford Hospital's Institute of Living who have roles with child abusers. And they attach me and others to fake conversations when I yelled and forced people to call the police without telling them why. Because I knew they were going to lie. Because I caught them with a former detective Dylan and with the police chiefs, with sick games with kids, and with the hospital, other things too, intercities too, as the ones were leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since, and as the ones switching names with them. Let's get them on names, one name in sequence. They should fear God for bringing a president before the courts. They have New York still planting evidences with the World Trade Center attack in the Ninth Circuit Court, with the people planting evidences in there, and with the WFSB lying about putting fake evidences since because they're using all natures of investigations. Investigators remotely, criminally foreign influence has something to do with their roles all along Route 3, all along Route 175, all along the Berlin Turnpike. And increasingly with the religious spots, they call in attacks on themselves so they can lie about the outcome of it and the reasons for it. In other words, increasingly the names of the people of the sciences, including the names of the people of the sports, are used remotely. You guys should follow mandated law when someone tells you there's a World Trade Center predicate act. And note that definition of act, because you have definitions of acts that are being used to obfuscate and hide. How religious books are about predicate acts, method /s. I tell it best so many ways. Vaccines, delusions raw. Your teachers stay, as theirs have stayed. We stay. Vaccines. I teach stays. Now y'all, in other words. So in other words, they're torturing the presidents. One of the reasons, in other words, you guys are asking them to entertain questions that are being and have been used by a breaching method. But the breaching method also does this against those countries and also kept all styles of roles with it while pretending blaming other things, others themselves, also all groupings of humanity. So there are formal statutes and precedents, readings, and uses with logic and nature, and informal ones, and the difference of that too is have been used by this hyper sophistication that was here, that stays here. So you guys will the locations, areas, and states. Some ways are constantly, increasingly preventing individuals, leaders, from the quality of factual nature necessary to explain things that they're allowed to explain to us because they can declassify it. We don't even need to classify it, except for the phenomenon of how locations, areas, and states have all kinds of identities of law, identities of the courts, identities of politicians. They want to use their knowledge of good and evil. For example, or they want to use their knowledge of their subjects, tactical terror from how they're supposed to. All you have to do is know the value of what is on the bridged Constitution, the value of sequence, true, and the value of how we have rights that are too numerous to list, and the value we have, how that was forbid, but through our own, and how such in such a way, syntactically, to keep the breaching methods involvements left out. How motivations would that for, are maintained, even though it's against each person's wants, or they are sensed. That is recorded. But you guys have to follow mandated law. So Central Connecticut State University has a Justa Kovinskis. It has a whole bunch of intelligence families, more foreign and domestic, and male and female, since they were kids, involved with all kinds of medical corruption and intercampuses and intra-campuses. That has something to do with their roles all along roads and routes, too. And I figured out what that is. See, this breaching method uses and used location/s, the exact way computers work. Right, clocked, right to all time, location, name uses. Programs are appreciating the identity of value/value progression we are. Positive, negative, or neutral. Relativity with instances. So you guys are making things more complicated with the simple. And you're making what's simple complicated. Tactical terror from how nature does. Because nature is a distinct identity of simultaneous nature. Because its complete identity is three natures of itself, bound with the extent we can discern. Not just because of why and how we are individual group/s. Every language are unique, and English, the queen of unique language. No grammar, no school. You have English learning be fluently only through no English and other languages were revealed. They were revealed before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced. Then the sciences and the syntax of the names of the people of the sciences could no longer afford to be, let alone to project, short words and convictions and theories proper by the sciences as they are capable of being used. See, we have had abridged uses of the sciences relative to why and to how we are directed to get the Constitution unabridged. But see that breaching method, forced, tricked, and hurt and persuaded, names A through Z, to blame those abridgments on other things, others, and or on selves, and or it's sensed and adapted and adapts effectively. That's why everyone's got to stop giving voting value it doesn't have. That's why, in other words, people need to follow mandated law when people refer to predicate acts. And more people are going to be referring to predicate acts. I'm not even a lawyer, but we don't have to be lawyers to discern how predicate acts with facts are involved here. And Little Rap Guy and Friends have counter-extorted the entire cartoon value nature system. Little Rap Guy and Friends have everyone counter-extorted too. For example, also act, and because they also has a better description of the proverbial devil and or Shaytun, and or why and how it needs more than one name. And what we're going to call this name is an hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. And we're going to reveal an anti-hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise act. Because hyperpantheism is about the law, /S, better than you've heard since ancient times. This is just your minds. I've shown the means I have to teach us best. Boxing, the whole entire species body longs to shadow box, by the way, which hurts not one. Boxing is fun, this way alone. When the whole species body tries to shadow box some rest. But some at least try to pace. And some rest, I tell it best. But long, as much as each. The species volume, science/S science, has stayed the bridge to A through Z. Sickly distinctly hurt because the breaching method uses functionally. How sickly non-distinctly is left out and is self-valued while being and having been left out. That's how the breaching method discerns. Just like a program discerns with the value/value progressions of the computer/S relative. No, everything is about relativity/hyperrelativity. So, in other words, boxing to teach us things. So that's why they have little kids. One of the reasons they're torturing little kids. You guys have them repeating and sustained. You guys have all kinds of confessions wherein how you communicate other than you say. You have all kinds of people that frame issues. They lie about their passions and emotions from where how they use other people's names. People that they don't even know. They're gonna that time where they're gonna walk by. Oh, I was in a class with the person, kids, and mixed too with the religious theme simultaneously, and where and how that's involved with their roles, planting fake motivations and evidences on all sides of my house, with the same ones through time increasingly. In other words, we get them on paper, one name in sequence. Yeah. I want a response for the principal child abuser's confessions too. And more people with the Weathersfield Police Facebook page have with New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page, Harper Court's Facebook page. They have roles with federal crimes with those courts at West Harper locations before the World Trade Center attack. A Dean Judd and someone who said is his family member, his kid, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. I have no conversation with them if they put me in the fake transcript. They're trying to plant evidences. And they have collusions with people intercities and on my street as the ones involved with the wire crimes now with Weathersfield Police. They're not going to hide behind the rules with Afghanistan. They're not going to hide behind the rules with Korea. They're not going to hide behind the rules with Italy. They're not going to hide behind the rules with Ireland. They're not going to hide behind the rules with France. They're not going to hide behind the rules with Pakistan. Something to do with Pakistan, too, with the people involved with the World Trade Center crimes, and with intercities with Central Connecticut State University, as their roles with internationally and interstates, as the ones on off the World Trade Center, the spots next to it, and the court next to it. And since also police forms intercities has something to do increasingly Central Connecticut State University's intelligence has roles with East Hartford locations, planting evidences, identity thefts, and fraud slanders, including how the courts got ties there. Yeah! Let me show you guys how to fix the world. Let me show you the game, Angry Plant Parent. I'll donate this game. I'll show you how it runs. Oxy, your native drum. Here that goes. That goes back. So in other words, someone tell Judge Napolitano too. Right arms, I'll give you one time to confess or say sorry. Even if you don't say sorry, just confess. Otherwise, I'm gonna bring it up more. I'm gonna do a video about it. You brought up Judge Napolitano, and you brought up the Officer Powell. You were playing games, obstructing justice, with the cops switching names, and with more child abusers than the proven one that they already forced. With worse, therefore, first still. No. What did you do, Ron Adams? Confess what you did, though. Don't make up something that you keep making things up and changing things. You change names too. No, we shouldn't play games. Who is this Officer Powell? You know this Officer Powell? And why did you say you? Why did you after that? Why would you bring up how you're at a wedding with Judge Napolitano? He set it up for you. Ask Judge Napolitano because his Facebook page is involved with the Fox Connecticut News. And their other news locations have roles. WFSB has me fake conversations with themselves about the World Trade Center too. They had me fake ties to a little kid with psychiatry doctors when I was a little kid, and as an adult too. They attached me to fake conversations with the Leahy family. The one guy had barely any words with. He confessed. It was the only words about his roles with the jury too. In other words, all kinds of roles with jury contamination. And Sandy Hook has a prison in Sandy Hook, and they have campuses of various natures. There are proofs that the fire campus there also has roles with what I call fire campuses involved with, leading up to the World Trade Center attack and the attack context. And since the judicial branch and the executive branch have predicate acts methods together at West Hartford locations, has something to do with the Joseph Dennis. Increasingly, people associated with the Joseph Dennis have been planting evidences and fake ties, natures of ties to me, with people I didn't even have a class with at school. And I barely knew him at all. I barely was up like less than a handful of instances. I know Joe Dennis in real life when I was a kid. His neighbor slash S were involved like with an as like a former mayor Gold, and his daughter was roles planting evidences in databases with various natures of federal criminals before they got caught, and increasingly involved with her, and their roles planting evidences on all sides of my house. So that's one of the things hyper evidentially recorded. They're also pretending other. And how they get away with that is their roles with foreign and domestic readings of statutes criminally foreign influence, including Russians with the Wethersfield police lawyer and the FBI former director of the FBI police lawyer Robert Chevrolet. Now another one's name is Bayer, I believe. Um, and these are also people involved with not just news locations but public television, involved with live progression cover-ups. He was had language that made it look like he might be, in other words, so a whole bunch of different countries associated with Route 3 with them, and with Elm Streets and Wethersfield and Rocky Hill involved with them, with foreign and domestic military, tactically delusions rock, criminally foreign influence, and pretending other for the breaching method too. Whoa. So we need to get them on paper too. Because in other words, they shouldn't be making people beg Judge Napolitano to fix what they've used his Facebook page for too. They shouldn't make people beg Fox Connecticut News to fix the fake news and the rules with the courts planting evidences with child defenders, leaders of kids. And they have more police forms with their kids involved. A police chief Cintron, a Jessica Cintron was it? I never met her in my life. She's one of the key ones involved with John Maiano and people associated with a whole bunch of people associated with probate courts, with drugs and medicines crimes, in the form of their rules with federal evidences crimes against people. and the roles with, in other words, and wire crimes with this Ray Cololo, who also put comments in here regarding drugs, because they do things. They attach me and fake uses of drugs and alcohol. They try to take pictures of it, and they lie about their motivations because they were already putting me in fake locations with them before that. And when I was in actual locations with the high wits actually recorded, and they're switching and forging names. So people with the name Demaro and Cololo and Kerr had roles with judges and prosecutors and their teachers and professors, putting fake things in databases with them, and overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and people associated with the Witness Protection Program has something to do with their roles with fire departments, with foreign and domestic, Russians and Americans at Hartford Hospital and the Britain Hospital, involved with people that live next to campuses too, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidence is also with the news. The news has people with the name with planting evidences with at corners of streets and of schools. Also with people associated with the corner of the street near Paul Kelly's house and all along Route 175 and the conjunctions and adjacents to it. These are people that put fake transcripts and evidences in databases and with the news. Also, because they have roles with uses remotely of all natures of investigations investigators also associated with this black pupils. So the cartoon character natures, they're gonna be forced, checked, hurt, and persuaded to defend themselves on the same page from the predicate acts with facts method. And little rap guy and friends using his words, which are my own. We're gonna call it this a predicate acts with facts method. That the branch of the government had been roles with too. With time clues, the difference between that their roles in the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, killers. That difference is also used to keep self-valued, blaming other things, others themselves, even when we're using truths too. You do those things that these systems are only capable of doing and of furthering. I mean, covering up, in other words, while pretending other. You're gonna keep killers. In other words, you're going to keep a breached military. Two, you're going to keep not one name capable of explaining why, how, really with other countries. Because nature forces us to appreciate simultaneously how we are names A through Z. Excuse me, species, body, and volume. While simultaneously, we are individual. See, but we have been systems tactical terror from its own, which which is appreciation of its distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous relationship to itself. So science shows, honest and sane science shows, there is a difference between positive peace and hyper peace. And all we have heard are natures of peace that have been only positive as criminal insidiousness natures of positive. So in Israel, in America, in Iran, they have in Pakistan, they have roles with psychiatry tied to courts and prisons, into schools, into corners of streets, into corners of streets near people that live near them, near schools, next people next to news locations. These are people involved with the identity theft, fraud, slander method manifest that way. These are people involved with the culture, racketeering, manifest that way. Keeping other things others themselves blamed for the breaching methods, employments that way. Having, you know, things like prejudice, blamed for what it caused and keeps. All exceptions still, because you guys are used remotely. Not you guys. In other words, you guys wouldn't know what. Brian Adams, he's playing games with cops, switching cops' names and obfuscating, obstructing justice, changing what people say in roles, faking what they say roles, lying about their motivations for it. These are people with child abusers that have timed roles with elderly homes. And they know that I know this, and that's why they can't get on paper too. And the spots next to them, like a state corrections offices, Connecticut State Corrections offices, has roles with two speech class teachers I had in high school who were involved with predicate acts with facts, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and by the people I caught involved with the principal child abuser in Hartford Hospital with the same houses with them. A whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital have roles with people with the name Cololo that the Weathersfield police brought up because they're trying to make fights between people. And whoever they had, the Jamie Smith, planted at the corner of Fairlane Drive and Carriage Hill Drive, timing when I was going to come home from Hartford. I came home in a taxi cab. He's waiting right there. In other words, planting evidences with the Cololo family and the people with the courts. New Britain Superior Court has a Rick C. and Faglione, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the Timothy O'Brien and a Ray Cololo with wire crimes in Weathersfield Police trying to falsify police reports. They're putting me in fake conversations with police because these people have been planting fake things in databases since I was a kid. Fake ties to me, fake natures of ties to me, like with the Joshua Julian too. It has something to do with so in other words, I don't know. Jessica Levinsky is like a something. There's something between they were planting evidence, but that's my. I told them to do that. Yeah, but they're lying about there's a foreign involved with them. All these different countries involved with the Jessica Levinsky and a Rick Faglione and a Mark Violet and a Jamie Carone and people associated with the house on my street, Ray Cololo, and the people associated with them with conversations involved with the predicate acts with the police switching and forging names and planting evidences also with judges and prosecutors and their family members with the same house involved with wire crimes. And the names like Scalora, Close, one of the Close said that Scalora was their cousin. DeMoro also said that. And they were involved with depositions and all kinds of falsified police reports through time relevant, which is also communications they've been hiding. Has something to do with a recorded, confessed, demonstrated, and was confirmed. Paul DeMauro is also involved with them with wire crimes and with other natures of organized crime associated with the police forms, associated with Valley Crest and Weathersfield and at tomorrow's market in Rocky Hill, and the difference between how it was there and was before next to Hartford Hospital. And they have overt criminal enterprises involved and sexual circles that also involve rape and confessions tied to that and roles with various natures of real estate companies and the differences of who's with guilt too, in other words, and how they tab the family members of people associated with manipulated. To observe this, we have to follow mandated law. And we're going to force a quality of fact treatment nature necessary and proper to represent the dead because you're also stealing the identity of someone with the name Keen and his family member because you're going to need to hide what you guys used the sexual circles for with Joe DeMauro and Heather Hansen and her other boyfriends at the same time, per them too, not per me, and per their rules putting with their teachers. I didn't even have a class with Heather Hansen. They tried to make a fake exception with a Mr. Neville. Mr. Neville has something to do with it with people with that name, with Cromwell, with mayors retired and standing, and people involved with sequence shifts and various natures of criminal enterprises with middle school and grammar school kids putting fake ties to kids that I never even had a class with them. I never had a class and never even saw around the school. Joe DeMauro, Ray Collo, and Heather Hansen. They put me in other words, they're putting fake things also with the kids from private schools that came into my middle school to plant evidences. Then they go had conversations with police that tried to make them put fake things. They're putting me in fake conversations with people. Some of the people they put next to me, they have them brings up, and they can't afford to have what's discerned actually recorded. These people have been using investigators, to hide their own live progressions. They have been roles with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and of precedents while tactically delusions draw slash hyper-tactically since founding. Slash S, not just that, America. The people are sick of the suits and ties, the counters and exceptions, their thoughts. They're sick of the news that we know is fake. CT must break, but they recede. The rest must not recede. Please read. So you guys, someone tell Judge Napolitano, get these people playing his name and get my name off the fake conversations and change evidences. Fox News, you can't call on they're playing a game with the phones. They're pretending not to understand people. Then they're putting they're telling to narrate they're directing them to tell lies, but they don't have the right to lie. They're telling they have the right to lie by pretending lying about me using letters, fake emails. I caught them with child defenders, leaders of kids, digital crimes with the kids, including the females with the courts, because they got a former director of the FBI involved with women from Hartford courts, planting evidences in Rocky Hill after the World Trade Center attack, with the ones that were before it and after it making confessions. Eric Burgess also recorded confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that. In other words, he didn't, not all that, but in other words, I found out Robert Luskin's depositions involved with it and his co defendants and their family members, as the people have been stacking predicate acts on each of the campuses I went to. Increasingly, Central Connecticut State University in New Britain and other campuses and their family members have been planting evidences at other campuses because they are shown needs to, but where and how they are used remotely. A whole bunch of different countries at the same time. It's relative to where and how, really where and how they have the audacity to pretend they have intelligence. The people running the world, and they go and speak for culture. They have a lot of their minds when they speak for culture. Black people, yeah.